Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another edition of Catching-101 TV. Man, just like always, I say it every week, but I'm fired up for today's guest, a guy that I got to know through USA Baseball and then got to know when I was coaching at East Tennessee State. He was over in the middle of the state, Cookeville. Butch Chaffin. Man, you got a ton of wisdom you share on Twitter all the time. I would imagine a lot of people who are watching this already know who you are. But man, just wanted to say thanks for coming on. Look forward to our conversation. And for everybody who doesn't know you, if you wouldn't mind giving your quick background, just to catch everybody up to speed.
Well, been a coach in some form or fashion for 34 years. Been a high school coach, I think, for 21. I was special assignment with the Royals for 3. I was a Division I assistant at Tennessee Tech for 4. Uh, was a high school assistant, was a high school head coach, was a college coach, was a scout, was a high school head coach, 13 years with USA Baseball. That's where I met you. First time I met you, I think it was in West Palm, and you were sitting in the lobby reading some kind of business journal, and I was like, what the heck's that guy doing? And then I heard you talk, and I was like, golly, this guy is so smart, it's not even funny.
No, well, I don't know about that, but I do think you're right. I think we're in the breakfast and getting ready for go scout some games, go watch some guys. So it's always good times, man. I always say it, and people probably have heard me say it before, but one of the things I love about USA Baseball is it's just good people. You know, I mean, it's a breeding ground for a great group of dudes. And I'm fortunate for the opportunities I've had through there. But man, just getting to know guys like you through USA Baseball has been awesome.
Yeah, USA Baseball, it's funny because, guys that can't get along, they're there for a week, and then you never hear from them again.
It's
You
funny
know,
how
I,
that
I don't
works.
I don't know if USA Baseball has a CIA connection, but those guys tend to drop off the map. But
They got the eye in the sky going on for sure.
right.
But man, let's go ahead and kind of get going on the topic that I want to talk about today. And like I said, the reason I wanted to speak to you about this topic is I get I get asked a lot of questions by parents of high school catchers or even high school catchers. And I want the kind of central theme of the conversation to be around, what does it take to make a great high school catcher? Not necessarily a great little league catcher or a great MLB all star, but you've seen these guys, through coaching them, through recruiting them at your own level, the guys you've played against, and then the guys with USA Baseball. I mean, you've seen a wide variety of players that came in all shapes and sizes. So I'm just curious to kind of get your ideas about what makes a great high school catcher. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and throw you one lob softball before we get going, just because it's
Okay.
what's going on in the world right now. So who you got? You got MJ or you got LeBron?
Michael Jordan.
Obviously, right?
There was there's no doubt. And I tell people all the time, everybody's like, Michael Jordan, he's a competitor and he was hard on his teammates. Well, the thing about Michael Jordan is you were going to be great whether you liked it or not because he was going to drag you to greatness.
Yeah,
And I
you didn't
think
have an option.
no, and I think LeBron, he might be the greatest individual player of all time where he can take over a game by himself. Michael Jordan can force 4 other guys on the court to be great,
Yeah. He,
and drag them to greatness.
yeah, that dude's he's a leader, man, and that's why as we kind of talk about some of the things a little bit later, I'm sure some of those things will come back around. So the first topic that I want to bring up is probably it's not what most people would expect. I'm assuming most people think that we're talking about catching, we're going to talk about defense and throwing and receiving and this and that, and we'll get to that. But the first thing I want to ask you about is how does offense come into play? Because I literally get more emails and more DMs than you would imagine from parents that are maybe upset because of playing time or a catcher that thinks they should play more than they do. And it's the same story every time. Coach, my kid is a better catcher. He blocks better. He's a better receiver than the kid who's starting. The kid who's starting a little bit better offensively. But why is he not playing? And without being there, I never have the answer. I know it takes a total package, but we have to be honest. I mean, offense is part of the game. And if you're going to play at a high level, you have to be able to do it somewhat. But I'd just be curious to get your opinions on how much of a factor does that play in high school, and maybe it's different in the big leagues, maybe it's different in college ball. But as far as an offensive side, how important is that for a great high school catcher?
I think in the big leagues, you can have a 18-year career and hit 200 lifetime.
Mhm.
In high school, I think, and there are exceptions to it, but I think in high school, your catcher's going to hit 2, 3, 4, 5. He's going to hit in the middle of the order because most high school catchers are going to be bigger, stronger.
Mhm.
Now, again, exception to every rule, and somebody's going to hear this and go, my son's a great catcher and he weighs 120 pounds. Well, there are exceptions to every rule, but in high school, you know, uh, most catchers are going to hit in the middle of the order.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And it's one of those deals. I always tell parents that it's whoever has the most value. I don't know whoever gives us a better chance to win that day. And like I said, without me being there and knowing the team and knowing every player on there and how they work and what their strengths are, it's hard to it's hard to kind of state that. But I do know that it is a part of the game, and whether you like it or not, you can't just be a great thrower and great blocker and be horrible offensively and expect to play.
Well, I've been in situations where I had a hitting catcher and a defending catcher, and we would put the defensive guy in late, like he was our closing catcher.
Hmm.
And, I don't understand a lot of times the catching position, as you know, is so demanding. It's hard to many times get your swings in and be really elite behind the plate. But if I was going into high school and my son was a catcher, we'd work 75-25 catching to hitting. And he would be so good defensively that the coach couldn't deny it. And he'd start out maybe playing 1 or 2 innings at the end of the game, and they could pinch hit for him his second or third at bat and just kind of work his way in while he's learning to hit at the high school level.
That's a good
So,
point. And I think people need to, um, I hate to say, know your role or accept your role, because let's be honest. I mean, everybody wants to achieve greatness and everybody wants to get to the next level, whatever that means or whatever that is. But especially the young guys, man, it's okay to be a defensive replacement when you're in the beginning. I mean, I think defense is important. As somebody who lives and breathes catching, I think defense is unbelievably important. But I wanted to get this out there. I didn't want to have this conversation and not at least some point, touch on the offense, because it is a question that a lot of people have. And it's a good question. You've written a lot of lineups. You've seen a lot of catchers come through your programs and your teams. So I kind of had a feeling that's what you were going to say and how you're going to answer. But it is good to hear it from you. So now,
usually, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but usually catchers, as the mentality is a little different. And when the mentality is a little bit different, the work ethic in the weight room is a little bit different. And when the work ethic in the weight room is a little bit different, that guy, he's stronger. And lifting weights, it's like addictive. You see a little bump in your arm, you want a bigger bump, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, the bat feels light, the glove feels light, you're controlling the ball. Strength is key. And it seems like catchers, they like the weight room earlier than most position players.
well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I wanted to speak about a little bit later. But since you mentioned it, let's go ahead and bring it now. Now, again, just from following you on Twitter and knowing what you're all about, the weight room is a big part of your program, right?
Absolutely.
So obviously there's a benefit for players being bigger, faster, stronger. But would you mind just kind of, as a high school coach who's been around and coached at a high level and done all this stuff, would you mind kind of maybe going a little bit deeper on that and why you love it so much or why it's so important in your program?
Uh, Zan, I was that guy a long time ago. It's like, oh, let's not lift things above our head. Heavy weights, you're going to shorten your muscles and you won't have, any strength in your throws, any ride, any carry. And man, then I had Rich Froning about 15 years ago, who's CrossFit fittest man on the planet. And that dude got after it in the weight room and got results. And he was like, Coach, we need to lift more. And I was like, okay, let's be safe. And he left and he was like, listen, you need to lift more. We need to throw things over our head and push things around and work on movements. And I was like, okay, let's try it. And all of a sudden, all my guys were cut up and they had beach muscles, but they had functional baseball muscles and they were loving it. And it's become a cornerstone, man. If you can't work in the weight room, and if you're not, like, if anybody's listening to this, and I don't care, but like a lot of things I kind of pick my way and I don't want to offend anybody. But if you're a baseball player and you're not lifting, stop playing baseball because you're not going to reach your potential.
Yeah, it's part of it, and it's funny you bring him up. I would imagine there's some people who might not recognize the name, but as soon as you Google him, you're gonna say, "Oh yeah, I've seen that guy before. I've seen that dude on Instagram, or he's won the CrossFit Games, however many times it is."
4 times in a row.
How
Yeah.
about that? What was he like as a player?
Exactly like you think he was
Yeah.
as a CrossFitter. First time I saw Rich, like really in a baseball situation, it rained and we were in the parking lot and we were hitting rubber ball, ground balls in a parking lot. He had shorts and a t-shirt on. It's 32 degrees and the dude's diving on pavement and he's just cut up. And I'm like, who's that kid? And they're like, that's Froning. And I was like, Froning is now a starter. And this was like day one in the fall. So
Well, how can you not like that guy? Dude diving on concrete.
that was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Good, yeah, it's good stuff right there. And like I said, I did want to circle around to that, but I would imagine what a lot of people are gonna have questions about, what they'll want to know is the defensive skills. Um, in the big leagues right now, you're seeing this huge. I hate to say it's a shift, but I think for the longest time, a lot of coaches we kind of spoke out of both sides of our mouth. We would say receiving is the most important, receiving's king, but then you would go to a showcase and you'd watch a kid that has a hose and he was the one that's getting recruited. He's the one that's getting noticed by the scouts and the coaches and this and that. So we said there was an emphasis on receiving, but kind of when it came to the real world application of it, a lot of it was offense and throwing, and you kind of thought you could fix his receiving later. But with that being said, I know I'm kind of going around the circle, but at the big league level, because of all the statistics and the Hawkeye and the TrackMan, you're seeing a lot more emphasis placed on receiving now. Would you say that's trickling down? I mean, do you see that directly at your level and kind of the guys you're around? Is more emphasis being placed on receiving than the other skills?
I think so. And, but to be honest with you, gosh, I'm seeing like 13-year-old kids who are trying to manipulate balls when they can't even catch them in the first place. I think one of the most common faults of a high school catcher is losing focus and missing a catchable pitch, and it ends up at the backstop. And that thing's hit, nothing but air and dead cow. And then all of a sudden it goes to the backstop, and you're like, how did he miss that ball?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's probably trying to manipulate it before he had the skills. High school catchers, I know if you were a freshman, you were 14 years old, and you think your kid could catch at the high school level. Um, if he does, he's special because 14-year-old kids haven't had the reps. And if I was an 18-year-old kid and I get drafted by the Baltimore Orioles and they take me into camp and I'm seeing movement that I've never seen before. Okay. High school kids, when they get to high school, the hardest part for them is the speed of the game. They're seeing velocity they've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And your kid might be, a 10-year-old, he goes out and plays 4 games in a tournament on a Saturday and they're just lobbing it up there. Um, you know, Anybody can catch that. But you get an elite high school kid on the mound, and you put him back there with a kid that hasn't had his reps catching that type of velocity, and you're playing the game against the backstop, and that really draft pick, high effective pitcher, you put a garbage catcher behind the plate, and he's no good. And that's why I tend to see you have to have elite defensive skills to catch elite pitching. So if you're at a high school and your top arm is 75 miles an hour, it's really hard to grade that catcher out.
Mm-hmm.
And that we see the USA catcher, and the USA catcher, which I've stood next to you and watch you evaluate those guys. You're harder than anybody on the catcher because you know how important it is. But something that factors in is when you scout that game, you see that elite catcher catching a guy throwing 81, 82, and you're like, we ain't taking 81, 82 across the other side of the earth to play Japan and some of the Cuba. We're not going to be throwing anybody 81, 82. We're going to put, a 16-year-old kid that's 93, 94 on the mound with sick movement. And that catcher better be able to handle that.
Yeah, it seems like that happens, I think, at every level. I mean, I specifically remember it as a high school player, and I went to a small high school. I graduated with 48 people. I've told people that a bunch of times. But we had one guy that, I was, as a freshman, whatever age a freshman is, 14, 15 or so, we have one guy who's throwing 88. I had never caught 88 before. That felt like it was a million miles an hour. And then I remember the first bullpen I ever caught when I got to Ole Miss. It was a guy named Mark Holloman, and he's throwing like 95, 96, and it's like just completely different speed than what I was used to, and there is a huge jump. And just to be able to catch it, man, you got to be able to catch it first. So I'm glad you talk about talking about manipulating it. I think it's something that's sexy right now. Guys want to have the mitt work, and they want to receive and do all this fancy stuff. But there's a lot said in the beginning, just building a foundation for literally just catching the ball and keeping it off the backstop.
Right. I know we had Austin Hedges. I saw him when he was 17. He could manipulate the ball when he was 17 years old. And now, you watch clips of him and everybody's like, oh my gosh, watch him steal this pitch. Well, he's always been able to do that. He was an advanced elite catcher. And they're out there, and there are a lot of them out there. But if I had a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid, I'd hook him up on a machine and I'd ramp it up, 5, 6, 8, 10 miles an hour faster than what he's going to see. And I'd let him get used to that, because the high school catcher that can catch it easy and catch it with a calm body is a rare thing. And when I see a catcher that's calm behind the plate, if he's on the other team, I'm like, I don't need to see the arm. This guy, he can play, he can throw, because look how easy he's catching that. It's that catcher that stays on his knees all the time and is rolling around the dirt. I had a high school basketball coach a long time ago who was a friend of mine. We went and watched a game, and this one team, their girls kept falling down on the floor, and he goes, good players don't play basketball on the ground. Well,
Yeah.
good catchers don't play on their knees. They have body control, and they know how to sway, and they know how to use angles, and they can push, and get balls, and they know thumb placement and pinky placement, and they know how to put the pocket on the ball. And when they're in the pen, they know how to make it sound loud. They know how to make it sound soft. But you want to see if a catcher can catch, put him in a bullpen and see if he fights balls off. And if he's boxing balls and he's on his knees all the time, that kid, he's probably not very good.
I think that's a good way to put it. And I think it's important that, people who are watching this understand, you've got, before we started recording, you said you've got, this is your first year in 51 years, right? That you've not been playing.
51, 52 years.
So you've got a lot of experience to draw from, and you've seen a lot of catchers behind the plate, some good, some bad, and most, somewhere in between. And I'd agree with you. For me, when I was still a college recruiter, and you go watch high school guys all summer and all fall and all spring, the number one thing is if those guys are going to the backstop, like, I don't want to know what they look like. If I can see their face and I know what they look like, it's not a good day for them.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of always my, I hate to say rule number one, but man, I don't care. When the pitcher's throwing low to mid 80s, if balls are getting to the backstop, that's a bad sign. So I like that. Now, you did kind of talk about throwing, and one of the things that I want to ask and bring up, and maybe, I don't know if debate is the right word, but just have a conversation about, if we're going to say that receiving is probably, again, not thinking about offense, but receiving is the most important defensive skill at the high school level for a great high school catcher, what do you think would be the next most important? Would you classify it as the throw element or the way they block?
I think it's got to be the way they block. If you can control the block, not just throw yourself in front of a ball, but actually control that block and make it drop like right in front of your right kneecap, so it's an easy pickup. I think if you have a very average arm, if you'll get to blocks and drop them close to your body, you can pick it up quicker, and it makes your arm look a little quicker. If you block and have to run and get the ball, it's going to make your arm look a bit longer. Guys that have long feet, long feet, long arm. If the feet are in the air a long time, it's going to make for a long throw. That guy that's got that short, quick arm stroke, he understands it. He understands what he's doing. And true story, 2014, we were scrimmaging in Knoxville Catholic. And my starting catcher comes out of the bullpen before the game, and he goes, "Coach, I can't lift my shoulder." And I'm like, holy cow. All right, Ben, get stuff on. We put our backup catcher in. Now, our backup catcher, who was a senior, when he tried out as a freshman, when he threw, it two-hopped second base, but he blocked really clean. He was really easy, and he was calm when he blocked. And all the coaches were like, we need to cut that kid. And I was like, hey, let's keep him. You know, I got a rule, probably shouldn't tell people. If you try it at my place and you're a catcher or pitcher, I'm probably going to keep you, you know, because those are hard to find. But so we keep this kid, fast forward to his senior year, and he's going to play a little bit. You know, he's a good kid. We're going to play him a little bit. First scrimmage of the year, the starting catcher comes out, and he's done for the year. And I kind of get caught without a catcher. So this kid catches every inning of 4 scrimmages, and then we make it all the way into the state tournament, play 40 games, and he caught every inning of every game.
Man.
Now, here's the thing. His arm wasn't great, but he carried himself like a catcher, and it scared other coaches who thought he could throw. They didn't even try to run on him. I think people were like, he threw out 4 of 8. 8 stolen bases against us in 40 games because my catcher acted like he could throw. And college scouts would, after the game, go, I love your catcher. And I go, golly, thanks so much. And then I go, in my head, I'd go, he can't play, you know? But that dude, I don't think we get to the state tournament without that guy because he embraced. I remember early on in a practice, I put gear on and I went, you catch for that team and I'll catch for this team. And I was like, hey, 2 outs, 2 outs. And I was all over the place and I was running my routes and I was giving my pitcher, you know, fist pumps. Let's go. Let's go. Come on. You know, or think. And he watched me and he started playing the role because as a coach, I play a role. I play the role, the acting role of head coach. Well, the catcher, he plays a role too. He's a performer. So he acted like a catcher. People believed it. He shut down the run game by being vocal and showing leadership, and it scared a lot of high school coaches. And it was tremendous. It was absolutely tremendous.
That's an interesting story, and I think it's promising for a lot of guys that, you know, maybe don't have the best arms, and they know they don't have the best arms. I mean, let's be honest. Anytime you go to a showcase, your numbers are posted, and they're probably inaccurate, but they're posted, and you know who's the best thrower and who's not the best thrower, and you probably have a pretty good idea where you're ranking. That's one area that a lot of guys want to improve. But I feel like a lot of guys who are, you know, plus defensively they can receive and they can block. Sometimes they feel like they get overlooked, you know, because they don't have that one thing that stands out. And that's just a great testimony that you can be a great high school receiver and be an average thrower. You know, again, if we're talking about trying to get to the big leagues, yeah, you got to be able to throw. I mean, you got to do it all when you're trying to continue to take up the ladder. But if you want to be a great high school catcher, I mean, you don't have to be an excellent thrower. It's nice to have that tool, but if you can block, I mean, that's very, very valuable. At the big league level, I know guys like the stolen base and it hasn't disappeared, but the numbers are going down every year just because of the way the game is played. Have you seen any trends like that at the high school level?
I think at the high school game, a lot of high school coaches, they realize that, you know, they're stealing off the pitcher most of the time. Because a lot of high school pitchers will get into counts and they'll throw, you know, the same pitch. And if a guy's got a 72 mile an hour, 65 mile an hour breaking ball, something like that, they're going to pick up pitch and run. I would think that there's one area of the high school game that's really picked up in the last few years. That's the ability to steal bases and run the bases, go first to third. There's, you know, I'm seeing a lot more guys try, which they should. That's a big part of the game. And a big part of the high school game is because, again, catchers, they don't get the reps. Their transfer, the separation from glove to hand is very subpar. And a lot of guys, they're getting 2 or 3, 4 steps off the pitcher, and then you got a bad transfer from glove to hand. You have over rotation of the shoulders, and the whole thing slows down. So I think it's easier than it's ever been to steal bases. But you know, don't think for a second there aren't a couple of guys that we play that they have the ability to shut us down. It'd be stupid. It'd be stupid to get thrown out 5 times in a game. That's how coaches get fired. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, well, it's funny you say that because that was kind of the topic I wanted to bring up. It seems like um, some people, and again, I don't know exactly where I fall on this, but it seems like at different levels of baseball, people value different tools more. And some people would argue that at the high school level, if you have a catcher who can throw, like you said, it completely shuts down the running game. Like he comes in the first inning, you throw a 1-9 to second between inning, like, okay, all right, we're not stealing today. Completely shuts it down. So I think it's an interesting concept. And like I said, I don't know if I'm 100% bought into it, but I think there are times when at different levels, different tools kind of play differently.
oh, without a doubt. And again, if you have a guy on the mound and he's getting the ball to plate quick, and then you got a guy behind the plate that's a 2-0, 2-1, listen, I see a lot of guys, and I've seen it. You've seen it. And we've been standing there side by side and watched it. Some guys can throw an 8-5, a 1-8-5, a 1-8-2. I remember '08 Harper from his knees. You can see this clip on YouTube. He throws a 1-7-9, and I've got it on my stopwatch. And Sammy Serrano is sitting next to me, and I went, "What'd you get?" He goes, "What'd you get?" And I said, "I'm not telling you until you tell me." And we showed our watches, and it was 1-7-9. And that's Bryce Harper from his knees, who
Yeah.
had to move out from behind the plate because they just didn't feel he was a clean enough catcher. Bryce Harper, Schwarber could catch in the big leagues. I've seen film with Schwarber who everybody was like, "Oh, he can't receive," but he adapted really quick. If he wanted to be a catcher and they wanted him to be a catcher, he could be a catcher.
Yeah.
But they're going to put that bat in the outfield so that bat hangs out for a while. There are a lot of guys. But on the flip side of this, you've seen, and I've seen this, and I always tell people, hey, you think catching's easy? Well, take your shortstop, put some gear on him, and put him behind the plate, and look how awkward he looks.
Mm.
All that athleticism that plays out there at shortstop, it won't play behind the plate. So, hey, what's your kid want to be? If your baby crawls over and straps on shin guards and wants to be a catcher, encourage it, because
Yeah.
there aren't many good ones out there.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how you mentioned that because there definitely has to be some level of even keel. I think coaches like guys that have energy, and you want guys that are loud and play hard and bounce around and do all that sort of stuff. But just the personality of a lot of really good guys, they're even keel. They're able to slow the game down. Their heartbeat never rises. There's just that kind of they got ice running through their veins, for so to speak. So I'm glad you kind of mentioned that because that's an interesting.
It's a confidence position. If you're good at it, you're going to think you're better at it. And this from catching. And you really know this from catching. You caught in the SEC and you caught pro ball. That guy takes off and the ball still is not in your glove. And it seems like it takes forever for the ball to get your glove. Now, your feet are on time. Your left foot moves. Your right foot moves. Your left foot gets to the ground. You got a good transfer, and that guy's still moving. And you haven't let go of the ball, and that he's that far from the base, which out there is 10 feet. And then you go, phew, and you put it right on the money, and there's a little V tag at the other end, and in your mind you went, how did I just throw that guy out? Well, you did it because you threw that guy out because you had done that in practice a million times. You had repped that a million times.
It's a good feeling, as a catcher. It is fun being back there, and you just know you can tell where a guy is when you receive the ball. Like, oh yeah, I got this guy.
Yeah.
When the ball hasn't even gotten to you. Yes, that's fun. You mentioned a couple interesting things there, but I want to kind of circle back around and hit one more thing on the blocking front before we kind of hit that. At the high school age, guys definitely have less precision or less accuracy on the mound than they do at the big league level. And so, a lot of guys, that's why they focus on their blocking. And you hear, I don't want to say excuses, but you hear different reasons that guys on their mound aren't as good. They're not hitting their spot as often. So I got to be better to block. I got to be able to move and receive and do that sort of stuff. What would be maybe a tip, or how do you coach your catchers when a high school guy is struggling on the mound? what do you encourage them to take a mound visit, go talk to them? How do you kind of coach that side of the game, the mental side of the game?
It's going to sound really stupid. It's going to sound really stupid, but um, we're telling our pitchers, hey, stop throwing at the glove and throw it in between his feet. Wherever he sets up, throw it in between his feet and get it there in the air. If you got a guy bouncing breaking ball, he's got no command, he's got no control, he's got no feel for what's going on. Put another pitcher in. But as a catcher, how many times have you called time, gone to the mound and go, hey, can you get this thing to me in the air? Give me a chance back here.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah. Well, demand it. And if you demand it and that's what you emphasize, I emphasize throwing the ball to the hitter. Throw the ball to the hitter. Keep it in between the catcher's feet. Make them pull it to our left side of our defense where probably our better defenders are. And we got a chance to make a play. But no freebie. Stop bouncing it. Got pitchers that bounce balls all the time and throw a lot of balls in the ground. They have no confidence and they shouldn't be on the mound.
I like that. I agree with that. So as we're kind of talking about leadership and that sort of stuff, again, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think everybody likes a catcher who's loud and vocal and leads. Do you think that's a requirement, or do you think that's just a nice added bonus?
I think it's part of the role. It's part of the acting role. This year, I had a really good catcher, and he's going to Walter State, and man, that dude works hard. And off the field, he's that guy that he never says a lot. He's very quiet. He doesn't yell, but he's got that look in his eye like he can snap your neck, and everybody on the team knows it. And then he transforms because he knows, I want a communicator, not necessarily a leader, but I want the catcher's got to be a communicator. And everybody says, hey, I want my catcher to be a leader and be a take charge guy. I just want my catcher to be a communicator because he's staring at the field and he has to communicate situations to guys. I don't need him to pump anybody up. I'll do that. The center fielder who's getting one ball every third game, he can yell out encouragement. I want my catcher to be locked in, but I want him to be a communicator. Hey, 3-2, 2 out, still across right here. Talk to each other. Hit back to you, me and you. Hey, be aware of double plays right here. Hey, watch the line, know the score, know the situation. I want a communicator.
Yeah.
And I've never understood, it's a role. It's like if I took my guys into the auditorium and they had to act in a play, well, they may have to speak with a British accent. Well, they're not from England, but they can fake a British accent. Well, you can fake communication and leadership and all that behind the plate. Just give me some energy. Catchers that walk like, boom, oh, it's pop fly to center, and they walk to the dugout. Get out of here, man. Just jog off. Yeah. Hurry and get over here and give me some information I can write down on this little chart that keeps me active in the game.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you said that because a couple of years ago I spoke. I spoke on a topic. And I spoke on leadership. I kind of spoke on that similar topic. And one of the things I said was, it doesn't matter what your personality is off the field. When you step between the lines, you've got to have a different personality. You have to be loud. You have to communicate. You have to be vocal and get things done. And again, not rah rah, cheer. That's not what I mean. Like you said, you got to communicate. Let guys know what to do. Let the pitcher get over. But I think a lot of guys, particularly young guys, I know if you're a freshman in high school, man, a lot of times your first day, you're walking around with big eyes. You're kind of intimidated. You don't want to be telling seniors what to do. In colleges, I've seen it at the same time. I've seen young guys that they want to be the guy, they want to take charge, but they're just like, oh man, I've only been here a week. These other guys have been here 4 years. I don't know if I can say anything, but I'm a firm believer that you can learn to be a better communicator. I would say when I was in high school, I was probably a poor communicator, and I didn't realize it at the time until I got to junior college. And my head coach forced me to be a good communicator. He forced us to yell. And that's kind of when I adopted the idea that that's something that's trained. I mean, you absolutely can train that. If you are a young guy, let's say you've got a freshman or sophomore who looks promising, but they're maybe a little timid back there, or just not a great communicator. It doesn't matter what their personality is. Well, how would you help that guy kind of come out of his shell and kind of help him move up that path?
Again, and It's funny that you said that. I have a kid who was a freshman this year. Obviously, they played one junior varsity game. He's going to be a really good catcher. He's kind of a bulldog type, and he's a tough kid, but he's not a loud kid. And when I pointed out, hey, you're not communicating, and he goes, oh, like do the number of outs on, and I went, well, that's a start, but be a communicator. And he's just a very respectful kid. He'll speak to you when you ask a question, but he's not going to say anything out of line. And so we take him and we say, hey, watch Jace, our starting catcher, who's a quiet kid. But again, remember, he's playing this role of communicator. And he sees it and he goes, oh, okay, I can do that. So I think if they see people modeling that behavior, especially at the high school level, where my whole philosophy is this: when you're on offense, you can disconnect. You have a hitter, an on-deck hitter, a guy waiting. Well, if you're not due up for 7 more batters, you can sit there, drink water, say nothing, and watch the game. You can do that. But when you're on defense, everybody on defense has to be connected. Well, how do you connect them? Well, it's either with hand signs or verbally. I want my middle infielders turning around to outfielders going, every third pitch, we're going to go, hey, 1 out, 1 out, 1 out. We're connecting. Because on defense, good teams stay connected all the time. Well, who's the conduit between the coach and that connection? It's going to be the catcher. I'll look at the catcher and go, move your outfield, adjust your outfield. And he'll look and go, hey, no flares in right. And you'll see the right fielder walk in. Well, there's a sense of satisfaction that, he's being a leader. Not many sports can you go, hey, scoot in, you're playing wrong. Oh, I am? Okay. And they walk in a couple. But he has that authority because everybody on the field knows the conduit to the coach is the catcher. He's closest to me.
Yeah. And I think, I think it's vital at all levels, but I would imagine particularly the high school level too, where a lot of high school teams, they have a JV team, or they have a 9th grade team. Sometimes they have a JV team, they have a high school team. Sometimes there can be a lot of guys out there, and the coaching staffs aren't huge, so if your catcher can communicate between the team and the pitching coach or the head coach and just let them know what's going on, because sometimes you might have to be down there in the bullpen and you're catching a guy without a pitching coach because the pitching coach is throwing batting practice, and there's just a lot of moving pieces going on. So I think it's important just to point out that, guys have to communicate, yes, while they're behind the dish and a game is going on, but you also have to learn how to communicate with adults and just speak to the head coach, be able to transfer information, speak to the pitching coach, and kind of give some back and forth there too.
Absolutely. You're an extension of that coach. And who better to be? That's like you see your better managers and your better pitching coaches in the big leagues, former catchers. Mm-hmm. Who better to be a pitching coach? And a lot of guys will go, I want a pitcher to be a pitching coach, which that's okay. But if you got a guy in the big leagues who's caught, a million pitches staring at the pitcher, he knows what it's supposed to look like.
So. Yeah. Well, and the other thing I always say about that is, if a pitcher's in the bullpen, he's going to be in the bullpen twice a week. Well, as a catcher, I've probably caught, 12 bullpens that week. So you hear the pitching coach communicate a lot more. That's one advantage I think catchers have, is you're just around the coaching staff more.
Absolutely.
So I like that. That's interesting. If you were a young catcher and you were, trying out for the first time to make the high school team, what would be a tip you'd give those guys? Again, I know I usually give guys tips. Hey, man, be loud, be energetic, do more than you're supposed to. But what advice would you give to somebody that's, like I said, maybe nervous, maybe it's they're 14 or 15 and they want to make the team, they got talent, but they've never been through the process before. They don't know what to expect. What would be a tip or advice you give those guys?
I'd say number one, love your gear. If you come out there and it looks like you take care of your gear, that shows you care about your position. I've never seen a shortstop come running into the dugout who was any good and take his glove and just throw it into the dugout, But I see catchers sometimes, they'll take their mask off and just throw it on the ground. You don't do that. So number one, show me you love your gear. Give me a little enthusiasm. Give me a little bit of energy. Catch the ball when it's in the air. If you'll watch and pay attention to this, watch him in pregame throwing. Watch who misses the most balls. It's the outfielders.
Mm-hmm.
because they're not used to a line drive ball on the ground. You know, a little shortstop. Outfielders, they don't get a lot of that. Now watch who doesn't miss the ball. It's going to be the catcher. You know, they know they have to focus a little bit more because they got the funny glove. Their margin of error. You know, an outfielder out there with a 13-inch glove and he can't pick a ball. I always laugh at that. And then there's this catcher that his margin of error is very small, and he's not missing. And watch good catchers, even in warm-ups, when they're playing catch with another catcher and that guy's 120 feet out and the catcher catches it, they stick it and they try to manipulate it. That when I see catchers doing that on the other team, I'm like, that dude can play. He's going to try to tear us up. He's going to get about 4, 5, 6, 12 pitches tonight off this high school umpire. He's about to steal some stuff. So we got to be aggressive at the plate.
Man, it's so funny you mentioned that, because as soon as you said it, I immediately think to the middle infielders I've coached, and the best ones, like their glove is pristine. You know, they set it down just perfect, and it's got its own little spot. They're taking care of it. It's not some beat up piece of leather that looks gross. And I feel like a lot of the good catchers are the same way. Like if you put your hand in somebody's catcher's mitt, like you better get ready to fight. That's a no-no. That's an unwritten rule. You just don't do. And when guys take pride in it, they have their mitt, and it's whether you put oil in it or not. You know, it's oiled up and looking good. You can tell that guy's got some pride about his position.
Coaching as long as I have, my best catchers, and here's a funny story, and I know you did this. He made the last out last inning. He goes out, he catches, he comes off. When he gets to the bench, he doesn't take his mask or anything. He just sits there with all his equipment on, leaves his mask on. And then we make 3 outs and he runs back out there. Catchers love wearing the gear. It bothers me when in between innings and you're not due up and you take your chest protector off. And if, you know, in that USA stuff, cross-checking, I'll be in Florida where you're literally losing 15 pounds a day sweating. And remember USA used to give us cotton T-shirts and we were like, what the heck are you doing? And then get on that red eye and fly to Arizona where it's 118 and you're watching guys catch. Oh, this guy, this pitcher signed with UCLA. And that catcher is behind the plate just sweating like crazy, not complaining and loving it. I love those dudes.
Yeah, you got to be a little psycho. I mean, you got to love it. You know, something's slightly off, and I feel like I can say that because I did it for a while. But something has to be off about you. I mean, you have to enjoy getting bruises, you know, and blocking balls and showing them off. You know, there's a screw loose in most of the good catchers.
We call it sniper mentality. You got to be willing to lay in the desert for 10 hours for a split-second shot. You know.
Yeah, man, I love that. You're right, and you're right. That's exactly right. Well, one of the questions, so earlier, you know, before we got on this call on Twitter, I put out a question, hey, what would you guys like to hear about? And it's a topic that comes up a lot at all levels, in all amateur levels. But, you know, pitch calling or calling the game. I feel like most catchers want to call their own game. A lot of coaches, they want to call the game because they feel like they have more control, or they know their pitcher or know the opponent better. But I'd love to hear what your approach to that is, and kind of maybe why you call it or why you let the catchers call it, or if there's a balance in between how you kind of came to that decision.
I can lay it out there and I can put this whole topic to rest with anybody listening to this.
Let's do it.
Number one, when's the last time you saw a high school quarterback call all his own plays? It happened it probably hasn't happened since like the 1920s or something like that.
Ever.
So number one, if a coach wants to call pitches, I don't have anything against that. With that said, this year and last year, my catcher called his own complete game. He called every pitch of every game. If he needed help, he'd look to the dugout. He still wore the wristband, which I bought from you. He still wore the band. Every game, he'd wear the band. If he needed help, I'd give him help. If he wanted help, I'd give him help. But here's the thing about that. You can't just throw a kid behind the plate and let him start calling pitches. Now, here's what I say. You want to call the pitches? All right, we're going to put in the work. You're going to sit with me for 30 minutes after every practice, and we're going to watch film, and I'm going to teach you how to do this. I'm going to teach you about effective velocity. I'm going to teach you about perceived velocity. velocity. I'm going to teach you about lane changes. I'm going to teach you about add and subtract. I'm going to teach you about up and down, width of glove, length of glove. We're going to break it down. You want to call pitches? Because
Yeah.
that's what my catcher, I said, I told him all that. I said, you want to call pitches? And he said, yes. And I said, all right, let's get after it. And that's what we did. He stayed 30 minutes extra every day in the fall and in the winter. We watch video, we do things, and I taught him how to call pitches. I taught him how to sequence pitches. If you're blowing a guy up on the fastball, keep throwing him fastballs. If you throw fastball in, go curve away, and then go fastball away, and then go change up in and see if you can have him hit it over the third base dugout. You got to understand sequences. But these guys that just go, I think catchers should call their own pitches and don't teach them. What is that? Are you letting high school quarterbacks call their own plays?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, man, you're 100% dead on right there. I mean, I agree with everything. If you want guys to do it, you got to teach them how to do it.
Absolutely.
What would be a way? Maybe this is a better question. What would be the best way for a catcher that wants to call his own game, and he's in a program where the coach maybe calls it, or maybe in the past they've called it because, let's say, the senior who was a catcher last year, he didn't take that responsibility. But now I'm a sophomore and I want to call the game. What's the best way for me to maybe approach the coach and ask him, like, just kind of start that conversation?
Well, I'd show him I could do it. I mean, if I wanted to call pitches, I'd show him I could do it. I'd show him in scrimmages. Hey, coach, can I call this inning? And then go. How was that? Did you see how I was sequencing pitches? And a lot of coaches will go, eh. And I've seen coaches, they get ahead 4, 5, 6, 7 runs. They'll go, you call it. Well, that's a great, thank you. Here we go.
Yeah.
They aren't getting any runs, and I'm going to tighten up my game really super tight right here. If I was an 8, 9, 10-year-old catcher, which I was an 8, 9, 10-year-old catcher, I used to watch Game of the Week, and I'd watch Johnny Bench, and a lot of people be watching hits, and I'd be staring, trying to figure out which fingers he was putting down because I wanted to know what was going on right there. And I can remember asking, like, my mom, was that a curveball? Was that a fastball? What was that one? That one was slower. Stuff like that. But just don't go, I want to call pitches, and then go out there and give up 3 home runs in a row, lose the game, and go, oops, sorry.
Yeah.
You better prove to me, just like that shortstop's proving to me he can turn too. You better prove to me you can call pitches. And, if you're just rolling kids back there and go, well, I think catchers need to call their own pitches. And you got like your 9U team, and that kid's just throwing down ones. And he ain't calling pitches because he doesn't understand what he's doing. He's just putting fingers down.
Yeah.
But if you as a coach believe catchers should call their own pitches, well, then you as a coach better be 30 minutes late to dinner every night because you're teaching that kid how to call pitches. That's an elite skill.
And that's what it takes, at least. I mean, there's not a short way around it. I think I said this in one of the previous episodes I was talking about. I forget which conversation it was now, but so a while back I started writing a book about calling pitches. I had given a presentation about it, and I started writing a book about it. And I'll be honest, I have every intention of releasing that book at some point, but I don't know when it's ever going to happen. Like, I don't know when that book is ever finished. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's a
Right.
skill. It's a skill set that you're constantly learning. It's constantly changing. There's not a clear and definite beginning and end. And it takes practice. It takes work.
And if you're going to call your own game, in order to call pitches, you got to understand hitting. So how well do you understand hitting? Can you read a swing? Can you read a stance when you're 1.5 feet, 2 feet away from it and it's happening and you're blinking your eyes, but you're trying to read that swing? Is it long? Is his stride long? Can you get him on changeups away? Again, do you know about perceived velocity and effective velocity? Do you know about adding and subtracting? Do you know how many different curveballs your guys throw? Does he throw a get me over? Does he go back tip? Is that, you're calling it a curveball? Is that really a slider? Do you even know what you're catching?
Yeah. And that's where it takes a lot of work. I'm not saying guys aren't willing to put that work in, but it's going to take a lot of work between, either the head coach or the pitching coach or whoever's used to calling pitches and the guy who wants to learn. And maybe even if you do it for an entire year, fall and a spring, that doesn't necessarily mean you're an expert. Just because you've done something for a while, I mean, you still have to be able to get out there and relay the concepts.
And I would say this, and I had to do this when I turned calling pitches over to my catcher. I had to live with his results. Just like I used to have to live, if I called a breaking ball and the guy hung it and the guy hit it 9 miles, I had to live with that. So now I have to be able to live with his results. And if he puts down a 2 and the guy hangs it and the guy hits it out, I can't go, why did you call that pitch? Can't do that.
Yeah.
I got to live with that. When he comes off, and sometimes, again, the role of acting head coach, I have to go, I'd have called the same thing. And I did that. He's feeling bad and he's coming off, and I'm like, hey, it's all right. I'd have called the same thing. You didn't know he was going to hang it. And I know you didn't give the hanging curveball sign. So get out of your head. It's his fault.
That's one thing I've told a lot of guys, and I feel like a poor pitch or a poor result because of a pitch, I don't think it's usually because of the pitch call. I think it's because of the location called. Like you said, when do you call the hanging curveball the guy hits 6 miles? I mean, you never call that. You call the one that was clipping the bottom of the zone on the outside corner of the plate, So I think it's not necessarily something that's easily evaluated by most people, because it's easy to sit in the stands. It's easy to sit in the dugout and just be like, why'd you throw that? I wouldn't have thrown that. Well, you might have, and even if he did call that pitch, that's not the exact location he was calling it, because he's left it chest high, so it's a tricky thing that I think, I think this day's age, this day and age of catcher wants to get better at and wants to practice. But it's a learning curve. I mean, there's no way around it. There's no way to really get good at it quickly. One thing that I think, we probably had in our favor growing up, when we did, guys don't watch as many baseball games today. I've said it a bunch of times. They watch a lot of clips. They watch a ton of swings, a ton of pitches, a ton of strikeouts, a ton of plays, but they don't watch a whole lot of games. And I think to really learn how to call the game, you got to watch how the game is being called. I mean, for me, growing up in Mississippi in the 90s, we had TBS and WGN. So you were either a Braves fan or a Cubs fan. I happen to be a Braves fan. So I watched Javi Lopez and I watched Tom Glavine and Smoltz and Maddox and those guys. And I'm with you. All I did was I was staring at the catcher's fingers trying to see what he called. And I felt like I had some psychic ability because I knew what Maddox was going to throw before he actually threw it. But I do think you can pick up, learning how to, call pitches in that type setting. And unfortunately, I would say most guys just don't. Fewer and fewer people are watching TV, whether it be young kids or older people or whatever. The viewership is down, and that's one of the reasons that they're trying to shorten the games. And that's a topic for another day. But I'd love to see more young catchers just watch more games and really pay attention, like study the game, not just have it on in the background.
Right, and I agree with you 1,000%. And like I said, I'm older than you, but we're very close generation-wise, where we didn't have a lot of distraction. So because we loved baseball, and I see a lot of guys playing baseball that don't love baseball. They don't look for the game within the game. I watch a baseball game, and I know when I was scouting professionally, scouting, everybody thinks, oh, that's a great player. Well, duh, anybody can be a scout, right? No, because scouts and baseball coaches look at it from 2 different angles. When we're with USA and we're scouting a game, everybody's like, oh, how hard can that be? You pick the 20 best players. Well, it doesn't work like that. You pick 9 starters, and the first guy you're looking for is that utility guy that's happy to go away from home for 3 weeks and get 5 at bats and play a little bit. He just wants a gold medal. You got to fit that puzzle together. But I really think in today's society, and I'm not okay boomer, but what's happening is we live in a society where we talk into a box and we order 500 things in a box and pull around to the window, and we want it right now. We live in a microwave society where we throw it in there and we push 2, and a full meal's ready in 2 minutes. When we were growing up, your dad whistled off the front porch and you came running, and you got there and your mom had been cooking for 3 or 4 hours dinner. And so this society, they can't stand waiting. They can't sit in their car for 10 seconds at a red light without going, oh, come on, change. they've got to get there. I watched it the other day. A lady was in a hurry, and she was in a hurry and weaving in and out and pulled in McDonald's drive-thru. And I was like, she almost killed people because of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when people say baseball is boring, I'm like, that's okay. We didn't need you anyway.
Yeah.
You know, we're and like MLB speeding the game up. If I pay $100 to go to a game, I don't want the thing over in 2 hours. I want to be there all day.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm always looking for the game within the game, just like you are, just like anybody that loves baseball. They're
Well,
looking for the game within the game.
I know for me personally, like I didn't realize it when I was younger, but then as I got a little bit older and had a little more awareness, I started to understand I was probably the least fun person to watch a baseball game with, because I would literally just set up and just staring at people and looking at different things. Like I said, trying to look at the pitching coach, trying to pick signs. And it's like, I'm just a dude in the stands. What am I going to do if I know the third base coach's signs? You know, it doesn't help me or doesn't help anybody else, but it wasn't very fun for somebody sitting right next to me. And I'm just being a mute staring at the guys, trying to pick up something tiny and something minuscule. So, man, it's funny you mentioned that. Did you have any favorite catchers growing up? Like, who was your guy?
Oh my gosh. I grew up in the golden era of baseball. My guy was Johnny Bench, but I also had Thurman Munson. I had Carlton Fisk. I had some dogs, Steve Yeager, Joe Ferguson. You're a Braves fan. I had Biff Pokerova, Joe Nolan. I had all those. You're a Cubs fan. I had Jody Davis. I had all those guys. Johnny Oates. Are you kidding me? Jerry Grody. I had them all, baby.
There's some good dudes back there. I grew up a Pudge fan. So we actually had some of our family lived in Texas, and every summer we'd go out there for 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 days, whatever it was, and we'd catch a Rangers game every summer. And that was what I looked forward to. I remember the first time I watched Pudge throw to second, and it was just, I mean, when I say frozen rope, I didn't understand what a frozen rope was at that age until I saw him throw. And I was just like, holy crap, how does he throw like that? Like, that's freakish, you know.
Yeah,
so.
you're 50 rows back and you can hear the ball being thrown in the air. You're like, wow, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to know.
Yeah,
That's
like
special.
Yeah, like you talk about scouting, it's easy to know who the best guy is. I mean, you walk in the ballpark within a couple of minutes, you got the best guy picked out. You know, before the first pitch and before the national anthem, a lot of times you already know who the best guy is, but you're trying to pick those other guys out. So that's interesting. I love having conversations like that. We've been on here almost an hour. I'm not going to take too much more of your time, but again, any last words of advice for a catcher? I guess the way I'm trying to say this in the episode that I wanted to go is, when I say a great catcher, a great catcher to me does not mean he got recruited by 20 schools or he got drafted in the 3rd round. Now, it may have been a great catcher, but a lot of people, just the reality of it is, they're not going to play past high school. And for them to be a great high school catcher and to have a great experience, at the end of the day, it's to help their team win. So if you had any advice for a high school age catcher, or maybe somebody who's a prospective high school catcher over the next couple of years, what can they do, to help their team be the best they possibly can?
Number one, and I'm going to tell this of any high school kid of all time. My mother, she told me this when I was a little kid, and I always tried to be that guy. And, there are a lot of adults that don't like me. I've cut their grandkids. I've wronged them. But baseball coaches tend to like me because we're all kind of cut out of the same cloth. Mm-hmm. And number one, if you ask anybody that I was on a team with, they'll tell you I was the best teammate they ever had. So I would say, number one, be the best teammate. Because when you guys are, 40 years old, nobody's going to remember what your batting average was, but they will remember if you're a great teammate. Right now, and there's a guy in this town that owns a business, and I will not go in his business. And it's because I played high school ball with him, and he was the worst teammate ever. And I'm not going to buy from that guy. And I'm 57 years old, and I'm not going to buy from that guy. He was a terrible teammate. So he's going to be he was a terrible employee, and now he probably runs a terrible business. I wouldn't know because I don't go in there. But think about it. What if one of your teammates had a bank and he was president of a bank now and he was a terrible teammate? Would you go in there and get money from him? Absolutely not. And so I'd say, number one, be a great teammate. Number two, hey, if you have access to a machine or somebody that can just stand 25 feet away and gun balls at you, learn how to catch velocity. Learn how to be really strong from the elbow to the finger's tip. Learn how to catch without moving your upper arm. Learn how to catch. Keep it simple. Catch balls in the air. If I'm 14 years old and I put a senior on the mound and you can catch balls in the air, the big myth out there, and you know this, the big myth out there is this: there are very few guys that can make balls strikes, but you want to make strikes, and you want to keep strikes. And what I see is a lot of guys, they won't get in the weight room and they won't get strong from the shoulder down, and they catch balls, they turn their shoulders, and they ride balls right out of the zone because they can't stop it because their wrists are little and very weak. If you have a high school catcher and you can put balls in a hack attack and shoot them out of that hack attack 85, 90 miles an hour, and when ball hits leather, he can stop it, be that guy. How much skill does that take? Stopping a ball in flight. Stay off your knees. Be enthusiastic. Be energetic. Now, honestly, how much skill have I talked about so far that was physical? Very little.
It's all controllable.
That guy's going to start on 50% of high school teams.
Yeah.
And it's the only position. Think about it. If you can do those things, it's the only position on the field where, man, you're going to play. If you're a shortstop and can't field a ground ball, or you got no chooch, you can't throw, you're not going to play shortstop. You know?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and, I just want to echo what you said with number one, because, I mean, it applies to catchers. It applies to everybody. And I'll say this, the best coaches that I've ever been around, that's like their number one advice to everybody. I was fortunate. When I was at Ole Miss, Mike Bianco was there. He's still there right now. I mean, holy cow, he's got a ton of wins. The program before he got there is way different than what people know as Ole Miss now. And then I was fortunate, Dan McDonald was there as an assistant coach, and I started my coaching career with him at Louisville. And I believe he's one of the best coaches in college baseball, or at any level of baseball. But both those guys and other guys as well that I've been around, they all preach be a good teammate. Tony Skoll, my coach at East Tennessee State when I was there, that was what – be a good teammate. Be a good teammate. So while that's not necessarily catching specific, it is baseball specific and it's person specific. And I think if you don't take that advice and try to jump all over that, like you're just missing the boat.
In 2010, I was a pitching coach for the 18U national team. And our shortstop was Francisco Lindor. And I was fascinated by him because I never saw him in a bad mood and I never saw him down. And I sat down next to him and I was like, hey, sunshine, what's your story? And he was like, what are you talking about, Kev? And I was like, you're the happiest dude I've ever seen. You play happy. And he looked right at me. Now, keep in mind, he's 17 years old, about to turn 18. He looked right at me and he went, other people are for happy people. He was collecting people. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And he goes, happy people make more money.
But honestly, all joking aside, that's a pretty wise statement from a 17-year-old.
Absolutely. He was happy all the time, so he was always collecting friends. Everybody loved him. Everybody loved him. And if you pay attention, he's like that in the big leagues. He's really like that. That smile, he ruined so many pictures because I go, hey, Lindy, give me a picture. And he'd turn around and he'd have food in his mouth and he'd have all the food would be coming out. And I'm like, good golly, come on, man, just one picture, please. But yeah, I mean, be a great teammate. Be the best teammate somebody has ever seen. How much effort does it take for you? Hey, there's 2 outs, 2 strikes on the batter. Boom, strike 3. I'm going to pour that pitcher a little water. Great inning, man. Here's you some water.
Yeah.
Golly, you'll forget it in 10 seconds. That pitcher will remember that for the rest of his life. That's that dude, man. He was always supporting me. And he gave me the water all the time when I was coming off the field. And that guy didn't get to play that. And that guy was an awesome teammate.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I mean, I love that. I'll be honest. I remember guys in pro ball, like you talk about the guy in your town. I got some guys like that I remember and I don't ever reach out to, have no desire to talk to. And then I got guys like that, like you're talking about. We had one trainer. Every half inning I came in the dugout, dude had a cup of water for me. And at this point, like I'm a backup catcher and I'm not on the prospect list, put it that way, you know.
Right.
But he's still giving me a cup of water because I'm in Myrtle Beach and it's 105 degrees out there and I'm sweating, and it's like, man, that dude, I appreciate that. It's easy to
And
do
here's
things
the
like
thing,
that.
like Rossi. Rossi's the manager of the Cubs now. If he'd have been a bad teammate, he wouldn't be manager of the Cubs. He
Mm-hmm.
was the relief catcher. And his job was to babysit two other guys and make them great. Contreras wasn't a catcher. They made him a catcher. He's just naturally freakishly good. He can do some things bad because he does other things really well. Well, Rossi's job was to help him along the way. Rossi was a great teammate. Well, right now, somebody's not going to walk up and go, you know, you're a great teammate. I'm going to give you $1 million. But here's what's happened. Great teammates, they are never unemployed. They always have somebody to turn to get a job. They always have somebody to turn to for support.
Yeah.
If be a great teammate, golly,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, I know we kind of got off topic and we got off catching a little bit, but man, that's absolutely right. I want to say the name of his book is Teammate.
It is. It's a great book too.
So I actually haven't read that one. I've got to get on that. I think I've got it somewhere back on one of these shelves, and it's been on the list to read. But man, that's awesome stuff. Like I said, I don't want to take any more of your time because I know everybody's got things going on. But I definitely appreciate you coming on. A lot of good insight, a lot of wisdom. The press release came out today with USA Baseball schedule, so I don't know if I'll get to see it this summer or not because a number of events got canceled and things are changing and things are different. But definitely wish you the best of luck with the rest of the spring and hope your summer goes well. And like I said, man, I've enjoyed it and hope we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. And you know what? You are so good at what you do. And I'm not even blowing smoke. You know, when I first met you and you were reading the business book and you threw out a couple of business theories at me, I was like, this dude is going to make $1 million. There's no doubt in my mind. And just look at you. I've got these Walmart earplugs on and you're all set up in your own studio. You're a smart dude. You're a brilliant writer. You're an entrepreneur. You transform people's bodies. I see that. I saw Trent's body and was like, that's not Monjero. There's no way. I've got to do that, but I don't have the I'm not there yet mentally, but I'm going to call you sometime.
Well, I'll
But
tell you what, I'll tell you what, you don't have to keep going on about me. No, well, I appreciate you saying that, but you don't have to go on anymore about that. But I will tell you this, if something happens and baseball doesn't get cranked back up again, I'm hiring you. You're going to be my hype guy. You're going to be the guy that pumps me up and just keep, so but really do appreciate it, man. I always love talking with you, whether it be over breakfast or watching a game or now we're on Zoom. But man, I enjoyed it and hope things clear up in Tennessee for you soon and you guys get back to normal.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.